Kids kept getting hurt at the community pool. The city ignored complaints. I didn't. My daughter Zoe split her chin open on the pool drain during free swim on a Saturday afternoon in June. One second she was doing handstands in the shallow end. The next, she was screaming with blood pouring down her neck into the water. I jumped in fully clothed and pulled her out, while the teenage lifeguard just stood there frozen on his chair. The drain cover had been loose for weeks, according to other parents in the locker room, while I held gauze to Zoe's face waiting for the ambulance. The emergency room doctor used 7 stitches to close the gash and asked how it happened. When I explained about the pool drain, she made a note in her chart and said this was the 3rd injury from that pool she'd treated this month. A boy had gotten his toe caught in the same drain 2 weeks ago and needed surgery. Another girl had cut her hand on exposed rebar near the diving board. The doctor looked tired when she said the city should have shut that pool down months ago based on the injury reports. I filed a complaint with the Parks and Recreation Department on Monday morning. The woman who answered transferred me 3 times before I reached someone named Vaughn in facility maintenance. He listened to my story and said he'd look into it, but when I asked for a timeline, he got vague. He mentioned budget constraints and inspection schedules and said these things take time. I asked how much time, and he said he couldn't give me a specific date. When I pointed out kids were getting hurt, he said accidents happen at public pools and parents need to supervise their children. That response made my blood boil. Zoe had been supervised. I'd been standing 5 feet away when the drain cover caught her chin. This wasn't about supervision. It was about maintenance failures. I called back and asked to speak to Vaughn's supervisor. After 20 minutes on hold, a man named Gerald Oakes got on the line. He had the same dismissive tone as Vaughn, explaining that the pool had passed its annual inspection in April. I pointed out it was now June, and clearly something had changed. He said the inspection was valid for 12 months and suggested I contact my insurance about Zoe's medical bills. I hung up feeling helpless and furious. That evening, I posted about the incident in the neighborhood Facebook group asking if anyone else had experienced problems at the community pool. Within an hour, I had 43 comments from parents describing injuries going back 18 months. Slips on algae-covered tiles, cuts from broken ladder rungs, a near drowning when a pool vacuum malfunctioned and created a suction hazard. One mother named Imani described how her son had needed 12 stitches after cutting his foot on a cracked pool tile. Another parent, Russell, said his daughter got a staph infection from the pool that took 3 rounds of antibiotics to clear. I created a shared document and asked everyone to log their incidents with dates, injury details, and whether they'd reported it to the city. By Wednesday evening, I had documentation of 37 separate injuries over the past year and a half. Every single person had filed complaints with Parks and Recreation. Every single complaint had been met with the same response about budget limitations and inspection schedules. The pattern was undeniable. The city knew the pool was dangerous and had chosen to do nothing. Thursday morning, I called the local health department and spoke with an inspector named Chloe Brennan. She pulled up the pool's file while I waited and confirmed the annual inspection had happened in April, with no violations noted. I asked who conducted the inspection, and she said a contractor named Apex Pool Services handled all city facility inspections. I asked for the inspector's name, and she gave me Neil Sutherland. When I asked how to contact him, she said that information wasn't public, but I could file a formal complaint through the health department website. I filed the formal complaint that afternoon, attaching the shared document with all 37 injury reports. I included photos of Zoe's stitches and medical bills totaling $1,200 for the emergency room visit. I wrote a detailed timeline showing that complaints had been ignored systematically. 2 days later, I received an automated response saying my complaint had been received and would be reviewed within 30 business days. 30 business days meant 6 weeks. 6 weeks of kids swimming in a dangerous pool while bureaucrats shuffled papers. That weekend, I went to the pool with a camera instead of a swimsuit. I photographed the loose drain cover that had injured Zoe, the cracked tiles near the diving board, the broken ladder rung on the deep end, and patches of algae growing along the pool edges. I documented rust on metal fixtures and missing screws on safety equipment. I took close-up shots showing serial numbers and installation dates on equipment. The pool had been built in 1987 and looked like nothing had been updated since. A lifeguard approached while I was photographing and asked what I was doing. I explained about Zoe's injury, and he nodded sympathetically. He said they'd reported maintenance issues to their supervisor multiple times, but nothing ever got fixed. The lifeguard, whose name tag said Isaac, mentioned that 3 guards had quit this summer because they didn't feel safe working there. He was looking for another job himself. When I asked about the inspection in April, Isaac laughed bitterly. He said the inspector had spent maybe 20 minutes walking around and never even got in the water to check the drains properly. Monday morning, I called Apex Pool Services and asked to speak with Neil Sutherland. The receptionist said he was out on inspections but could call me back. I left my number and a message saying I had questions about his April inspection of the community pool. He never called back. I tried 3 more times that week with the same result. Finally, I looked up Apex Pool Services online and found they had contracts with 16 different municipalities across 3 counties. Their website showed stock photos of sparkling pools and testimonials about thorough inspections, but no actual credentials or certifications were listed. I started researching pool inspection requirements and discovered that Colorado required inspectors to have specific certifications from the National Swimming Pool Foundation. I called the foundation's certification verification line and gave them Neil Sutherland's name. After a few minutes on hold, the representative came back and said there was no active certification for anyone with that name. I asked her to check Apex Pool Services, and she said the company wasn't registered with them at all. This information changed everything. The city was paying for inspections from an uncertified contractor who might not even know what to look for. I documented everything and sent a detailed email to the health department, the Parks and Recreation director, and the city council members. I included photos of pool hazards, the injury log from 37 families, proof that Apex Pool Services had no proper certifications, and Neil Sutherland's failure to return my calls. I CC'd the local newspaper reporter who covered city government. The reporter, Dante Wu, called me within 2 hours. He'd been following the city's deferred maintenance problems across multiple departments, and this fit a larger pattern he was investigating. He asked if I'd be willing to go on record about Zoe's injury and the city's non-response. I said yes immediately. He wanted to interview other parents too, so I connected him with Imani and Russell from the Facebook group. Dante's article ran on the front page of the Sunday paper with the headline, "Dangerous Pool Injuries Dozens While City Ignores Warnings." The article included photos of the pool hazards, quotes from injured families, and information about Apex Pool Services' lack of certifications. It detailed how 37 complaints over 18 months had been dismissed with bureaucratic excuses. The article also mentioned that the annual inspection should have caught these problems, but the contractor appeared unqualified to conduct proper safety assessments. The public response was immediate and intense. By Monday morning, the story had been picked up by 3 local TV stations. The city council received hundreds of angry calls and emails. Parents were demanding answers about why their tax dollars were paying for fake inspections. The mayor's office issued a statement saying they were investigating the matter and had closed the pool pending a comprehensive safety review. Gerald Oakes from Parks and Recreation left me a voicemail saying he wanted to discuss my concerns and apologizing for any miscommunication. I didn't call him back. I'd already spent weeks trying to get the city to listen through proper channels. Now that the media was involved, suddenly they cared. Vaughn from Facility Maintenance sent an email asking for details about specific hazards so they could address them immediately. I forwarded his email to Dante Wu without responding. The health department scheduled an emergency inspection for Wednesday morning. Chloe Brennan called and asked if I wanted to be present during the inspection to point out specific hazards. I said absolutely. Wednesday morning, I met Chloe and 2 other health inspectors at the pool, along with Dante Wu, who was covering the inspection for the newspaper. The inspectors spent 4 hours examining every aspect of the facility. They documented dozens of violations, including the loose drain cover, broken equipment, insufficient chemical balance in the water, and structural damage to the pool deck. Chloe told me they were issuing an immediate closure order. The pool would stay closed until all violations were corrected and a certified inspector verified the repairs. She estimated it would take at least 6 weeks and cost the city around $80,000 to bring everything up to code. When I asked about Apex Pool Services, she said the health department was investigating their contract and had suspended their certification to conduct inspections pending an audit of all their past work. Thursday morning, the city council held an emergency meeting about the pool situation. The meeting room was packed with angry parents, many of whom I recognized from the Facebook group. The council members looked uncomfortable as person after person stood up to describe injuries, complaints that were ignored, and frustration with the city's negligence. Imani showed photos of her son's stitches. Russell read a statement from his daughter's doctor about the severity of her staph infection. Another parent described a near-drowning incident that had been dismissed as a child's panic rather than a mechanical failure. When it was my turn to speak, I brought enlarged photos of the pool hazards and medical bills from multiple families totaling over $15,000. I explained how we'd followed proper channels by filing complaints, only to be dismissed with excuses about budgets and inspection schedules. I pointed out that the city had paid Apex Pool Services thousands of dollars for inspections that were completely worthless because they weren't even properly certified. I asked how many children needed to be injured before the city took maintenance seriously. The council members asked questions about the timeline and how long problems had been reported. I walked them through the shared document showing complaints going back 18 months with dates and details. One council member, Barbara Lightfoot, seemed genuinely shocked by the documentation. She asked the Parks and Recreation director why these complaints hadn't been escalated. Gerald Oakes, who was sitting in the front row, said something about following standard procedures and not having resources to address every maintenance request immediately. Barbara cut him off sharply. She said, 37 injury reports over 18 months wasn't routine maintenance. It was a public safety crisis. She made a motion to immediately audit all city pool facilities and review the contract with Apex Pool Services. The motion passed unanimously. Another council member, Leonard Hayes, proposed creating a public database where residents could report facility hazards directly to the council instead of going through department heads who might bury complaints. That motion also passed. After the meeting, several reporters approached me for interviews. I spent the next hour answering questions about the injury log, the inspection failures, and why I'd decided to take action when the city wouldn't. Dante Wu mentioned he was working on a follow-up piece about other city facilities that might have similar problems with deferred maintenance and inadequate inspections. Friday morning, I received a certified letter from the city attorney's office. My stomach dropped, thinking it might be some kind of legal threat for causing trouble. Instead, the letter informed me that the city was launching a formal investigation into Apex Pool Services and Neil Sutherland. They were reviewing all contracts with the company across multiple facilities. The letter also said the city would be reaching out to all families who'd filed injury reports about potential compensation for medical expenses. That same day, the state licensing board announced they were investigating Apex Pool Services for fraudulent representation of certifications. If the company had been conducting inspections without proper credentials, they could face criminal charges and civil penalties. Neil Sutherland was also being investigated individually for misrepresenting his qualifications. The Facebook group had grown to over 800 members by this point. Parents were sharing stories not just about the pool, but about other city facilities with maintenance problems. The playground at Central Park had broken equipment that had been reported for months. The community center had loose handrails and cracked steps. The pattern of ignored complaints extended across multiple departments. I created a new shared document for people to log non-pool-related facility hazards. Within 48 hours, I had over 200 entries documenting problems across 17 different city properties. The data showed clear patterns of deferred maintenance and inadequate inspections. I compiled everything into a report with photos and timestamps and sent it to the city council, health department, and local media. Dante's follow-up article ran the following Sunday with the headline, "City's Maintenance Crisis Extends Far Beyond Pool." The article detailed the broader pattern of facility neglect and featured interviews with parents, facility staff, and city employees who'd been trying to report problems through proper channels only to be ignored. The article specifically called out the culture of dismissiveness in city departments, where complaints were treated as nuisances rather than important safety concerns. The city council scheduled another emergency meeting to address the larger maintenance crisis. This time, the mayor attended personally. She acknowledged that the city had failed in its responsibility to maintain safe public facilities. She announced the immediate formation of a safety task force to audit all city properties and develop a prioritized repair plan. She also said the city would be reviewing its contracting procedures to ensure all vendors were properly certified. Barbara Lightfoot proposed a citizens' oversight committee to monitor facility maintenance and ensure complaints were addressed promptly. The committee would have direct access to city records and the authority to escalate urgent safety concerns. The measure passed unanimously with implementation to begin within 30 days. Barbara asked if I would consider serving on the committee, and I agreed. 2 weeks later, the state licensing board revoked Apex Pool Services' business license. Their investigation found that the company had been operating for 6 years without proper certifications and had conducted over 400 inspections across multiple municipalities using falsified credentials. Neil Sutherland was charged with fraud and faced up to 3 years in prison if convicted. The board sent notices to every city that had contracted with Apex, requiring immediate reinspection of all facilities by certified contractors. The community pool audit revealed that repairs would actually cost $127,000, not the initially estimated $80,000. The damage was more extensive than first apparent because problems had been compounding for years without proper maintenance. The pool wouldn't reopen until the following summer at the earliest. Parents were furious about losing a full season, but most agreed it was better than continuing to swim in dangerous conditions. The city hired a certified pool inspection company to review all 7 public pools. 3 more were immediately closed for safety violations. The parks director resigned amid growing pressure about his department's failure to address known hazards. Gerald Oakes was reassigned to a desk job with no facility management responsibilities. Vaughn in maintenance was fired after internal investigation found he'd been falsifying work orders to make it appear maintenance was being done when it wasn't. I attended my first Citizens Oversight Committee meeting in August. The committee included 12 residents from across the city, along with liaisons from key city departments. Barbara Lightfoot chaired the meetings and made it clear that transparency was mandatory. Departments would provide monthly reports on all maintenance requests, response times, and completed repairs. Any request older than 30 days without action would be flagged for committee review. The committee implemented a public online portal where residents could report facility hazards directly. Each report generated a tracking number and automated updates as the issue moved through assessment and repair stages. The system made it impossible for complaints to disappear into bureaucratic dead ends. Within the first month, 340 hazards were reported and prioritized for repair. Zoe's chin scar healed well but would be permanent. Every time I looked at it, I felt both guilt for not preventing her injury and pride for doing something about it afterward. She started asking questions about the committee meetings and what we were working on. I explained that sometimes grown-ups make mistakes and don't fix things they should, and it takes other people speaking up to make things right. The civil lawsuit against the city took longer to resolve. 17 families, including ours, joined together with a personal injury attorney named Phyllis Kwan. She argued that the city had been negligent in maintaining the pool and fraudulent in claiming inspections were conducted properly when they knew Apex wasn't certified. The city's attorneys tried to claim governmental immunity, but Phyllis argued that immunity doesn't protect against gross negligence. The lawsuit settled 8 months later for $340,000 split among the 17 families. Our portion was $23,000, which covered Zoe's medical bills and compensated for her permanent scarring. More importantly, the settlement required the city to implement specific maintenance protocols and maintain the Citizens Oversight Committee permanently. The city also had to post quarterly public reports on facility safety inspections and repairs. Apex Pool Services went bankrupt, trying to defend against multiple lawsuits from cities that had relied on their fraudulent inspections. Neil Sutherland pleaded guilty to fraud charges and was sentenced to 18 months in prison plus 3 years probation. He was also ordered to pay restitution to municipalities that had paid for his worthless inspections. The judge specifically mentioned that his fraud had endangered children and called his actions unconscionable. The community pool finally reopened 15 months after Zoe's injury. The city held a ribbon-cutting ceremony and invited families who'd been affected by the closure. The pool looked completely different with new tiles, updated equipment, and a state-of-the-art filtration system. Every drain cover had been replaced with modern safety covers that couldn't catch skin or hair. The pool deck had been resurfaced and new safety railings installed throughout. Barbara Lightfoot spoke at the ceremony about how tragedy had forced the city to confront systemic failures in facility maintenance. She thanked the families who'd spoken up and specifically mentioned how parent advocacy had driven real change. She said the Citizens Oversight Committee had become a model that other cities were now studying and implementing. I brought Zoe to the reopening, but she was nervous about getting in the water. We sat on the pool deck for a while watching other kids swim. She touched the scar on her chin and asked if it would happen again. I told her that the pool was safe now because people had worked hard to fix everything that was wrong. We'd made sure it wouldn't happen to other kids. She thought about that for a minute, then asked if we'd fixed all the broken stuff everywhere. I said we were still working on it, but we were making progress. The Oversight Committee met monthly and reviewed reports from every city department. We caught problems early now instead of waiting for injuries to force action. The playground at Central Park got new equipment. The community center got structural repairs. The baseball fields got proper drainage to prevent flooding. Each fix was documented publicly so residents could see their tax dollars creating safer facilities. Dante Wu won a regional journalism award for his coverage of the pool scandal and broader maintenance crisis. His series of articles had sparked similar investigations in 3 neighboring cities that found their own patterns of deferred maintenance and inadequate inspections. 2 other cities formed oversight committees modeled on ours. The attention created pressure on local governments across the region to take facility safety seriously. I still think about that moment when Zoe came up from the water with blood streaming down her face. How scared she looked, how helpless I felt, how angry I was when the city dismissed my complaints. That anger became fuel for months of organizing, documenting, and pushing for change. It would have been easier to accept the excuses about budgets and procedures, but easier would have meant more kids getting hurt. 3 years later, the Oversight Committee is still meeting monthly. Facility maintenance requests are handled within an average of 12 days instead of languishing for months. The online portal has logged and resolved over 2,000 hazards. Not a single child has been injured at a city pool since the reforms were implemented. Those statistics matter more than any settlement money or awards. Zoe is 9 now and on the community pool swim team. She does flip turns off the wall where she once split her chin open. Sometimes I watch her practice and think about how close we came to accepting that accidents happen and moving on. How many other families would have been hurt if I'd let bureaucrats convince me that nothing could be done? The scar on her chin is a reminder that speaking up matters, that systems change when enough people refuse to accept broken things as normal.